murder liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You are now tapped in. Let's get right to it. So NATO is starting to speak out against the Trump administration, or more accurately, the Trump war against Iran. There are NATO so-called or supposedly NATO allies who are telling Trump outright no to the war with Iran. Also, they went as far as to say no to the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And in no shape or form are they willing to participate with Trump in his war against Iran. Israel and the United States war against Iran, to be more accurately. However, NATO has said that they are working up plans or designs to bring a situation to the Strait of Hormuz and also work in conjunction with Iran so that the strait remains free and open. Trump is not happy with that. Trump wants this situation to go as he and his administration, along with Israel, has planned it to go. NATO's refusal to partake not just in the war, but also now in the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is rubbing Trump the wrong way. However, I think that Trump did not anticipate the response he's now receiving from those NATO allies that he thought were allies who would do the U.S.'s bidding or do whatever the U.S. wanted them to do. There are a few who are starting to speak out against what Trump is proposing or is doing in the Middle East. France, for one, Italy, another. The UK also, Germany as well. These NATO allies have said no to all of Trump's proposals. Again, starting with the war, I think what upset them more than anything in terms of the American-Israeli war against Iran was that they were never notified that a war would take place. So therefore, why should we participate in a war we know nothing about? They all do agree that, yes, Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons, and they also say, but that was years away. That's not an existential threat, as Israel has led the United States to believe. So this is one of the reasons why Europe or NATO refuses to partake in this war in the Middle East against Iran. Again, this is what upsets Trump, because he expects NATO allies to do his bidding or to do the bidding of the United States government, because, as he said, the United States pays trillions to NATO. So basically, if we're giving you our money, you better damn well do what we ask you to do. NATO is saying, hold on, Trump, it's not going to work that way. And in fact, we don't support what you're doing no more than the people in the countries that we represent support what you're doing and what Israel is doing, has done to Gaza and is doing to Lebanon. So again, we have this situation occurring as a result of NATO's refusal to partake in this war. Trump has now put out that, okay, well, we're tired of NATO. Anyway, we don't need NATO. So I'm thinking about just disbanding from NATO, leaving NATO altogether. Let them fend for themselves. I don't know how that went over with NATO allies or countries in NATO who are supposedly allies with the U.S. But one thing is for sure, they don't seem frightened as a result of it. In fact, what they've begun to do is create framework that supports those NATO allies or countries who are part of NATO. The new ideal is to do their own thing, create their own defensive, the military, find ways to pay for all the things that need paying for without the help of the United States. So they seem to be preparing to go it alone, so to speak, without the U.S.'s involvement in NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That being said, I have some clips. I want to drop these clips for you guys. And I tell you, this is something to see. I don't know if you know this, but you need to know that this is the way NATO is thinking now. NATO is reaching out to all these other countries that the United States technically have issues with. So they're reaching out, they're branching out, and they are formulating, or they are creating their own alliances outside the framework that the United States had put out in terms of how NATO should go about creating alliances with other countries not a part of NATO, and in fact, not a part of the West. All right. So that being said, let's drop this clip. Before we do, please like, share, follow, and subscribe to Tapped, the Art of Political Discourse. You guys' participation and viewership means a great deal to us. We're also trying to reach 5,000 subscribers. We're getting along, and we appreciate those of you who have subscribed and partake in or with this channel. So that being said, let's get to this clip. And I think it's very insightful. It's very insightful. Spain, for one, is one of the most outspoken NATO allies against American hegemony and the war in Iran. Not only that, but Italy is now in the fray. And it doesn't seem good. It don't seem like it's going to work out well for the United States, because the word is that the United States may very well be on a downward spiral. Its power, its might, all those things that the world respected about the United States seems to be slipping away. And that is because of Donald Trump and his policies. All right. So that being said, let's get to this clip. And yeah, this clip is courtesy of Times Now World. Okay, here we go. Trump blasts NATO over Iran rift. Okay, NATO allies reject U.S. blockade plan. Europe pushes back against U.S. war. Transatlantic alliance faces major crisis.
U.S. President Donald Trump has sharply escalated tensions within NATO, openly questioning the alliance's reliability amid a growing rift over his Iran strategy. The trigger, a bold U.S. move to impose a naval blockade on Iranian ports, has exposed deep fractures between Washington and its European allies.
NATO wasn't there for us, and they won't be there for us in the future.
That seems to be Trump's insinuation that they will not be a part of NATO, and the United States won't look to NATO in the future for anything. That seems to be what he's insinuating right there.
Remark follows a clear refusal from key NATO members, including the United Kingdom and France, to join the US-led blockade. Leaders in Europe have instead pushed back against military escalation, signaling a preference for diplomacy and post-conflict stabilization rather than direct confrontation with Iran.
We're not supporting the blockade. Whatever the pressure, we're not getting dragged into the war.
Wow.
Despite Trump's earlier claims that multiple countries would participate, the blockade is now shaping up as a largely unilateral U.S. operation.
And it doesn't seem, but it is always the way that Trump goes. He says things that has no validity. When he first started talking about this blockade, he said, NATO countries, they're going to participate. Yeah, they're on their way now. They're sending ships. We're going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. And NATO is backing this play. Come to find out, NATO wants no part of this blockade, as much as they don't want any part of the war in Iran. Now, that being said, Trump goes on. He says a lot of things that has no validity, no real substance of proof. He says these things, though, and it is being said, in many circles, that he says them, though, to manipulate the markets. There is market manipulation taking place in the world, and a lot of people don't know that yet. And here at Tapped, we're going to drop something in that regard: the manipulation of the stock market by the Trump administration.
Washington has warned that Iranian vessels approaching the restricted zone could be targeted, raising the stakes in an already volatile Strait of Hormuz. France and its allies are now working on a separate multinational initiative, focused not on conflict, but on restoring safe navigation after hostilities end. The proposal underscores a widening strategic gap within NATO over how to handle the Iran crisis.
This strictly defensive mission will be deployed as soon as the situation allows.
With tensions rising and trust eroding, Trump's latest warning signals more than just frustration. It points to a deeper geopolitical rupture within the Western alliance, as NATO's unity faces one of its most serious tests in recent years.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, that this rift is of such a magnitude, such a schism, a gulf now exists. This widening exists between the United States and NATO to such an extent that a lot believe that there is no way to mend this friction of this fracture. There's no way possible that things will go back to what they used to be. And again, for all intents and purposes, it seems that NATO or the NATO countries are okay with that, especially the major ones. They are okay with that. The statement was made that they have a plan as soon as the situation permits that they want to incorporate or put into place. I just like to think that if that's the case, it will be done with or in conjunction with the Iranian government, as well as Oman, those two countries who, have more say or ownership over the strait than anyone else. So yeah, there's that. I have another clip I want to bring you guys into, and this clip is also, This clip is also, one second. Speaking to what we see taking place in the Middle East. Oh, wow. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so this thing is boiling over. It will boil over sooner rather than later. Trump, because he is undisciplined. There's a lot about Trump that is not normal. It's abnormal in terms of how diplomacy is utilized or exercised. Trump has no fillers. Trump is not necessarily, well, he admits he isn't a politician, and it shows. It shows to a large degree. Now, that being said, let's drop this other clip, and you guys tell me what you think about this one. Now, this is Spain's president, Sanchez, Pedro Sanchez. He's meeting up with Lula, the president of Brazil. So this is what I mean by NATO nations starting to branch out and align themselves with other countries who want to have world peace, a world economy, also a situation in the world in terms of the economy where the wealth of the world trickles down to the people in these countries. So this is a good start. And this is what I think really upsets Trump more than anything, because if you really think about it, the Trump administration is about greed. It is about confiscating, commandeering, appropriating others' resources for themselves, and then even in that case, none of what Trump has taken in terms of resources, from other countries have spilled down to the people in the United States. We see none of this as a benefit to our pocketbooks, our checkbooks, Mm. And this is Lula's response in terms of Trump and the United States government, the Trump administration's role, or the way Trump and them see it in terms of power and leadership. Lula and others are saying this hegemony has to stop because it is ruining the fabric of world peace and world cooperation. You know. And this is where that rift was created between Spain and the United States. Also, Italy did some of the same things. They restricted U.S. access to air bases for stops, and things of that nature. But Spain was the first to do it and said Spain's airspace is off limits to the United States and Israel as a result of the war that both those countries initiated against Iran. So this is what sparked Trump's ire against the prime minister of Spain, the refusal to allow the United States to commit these atrocious acts upon the Iranian uh, government as well as the people. Trump is not going to be forgiven of this guy right here, and I think he knows this. This is why we see him taking these steps he's taking in terms of acquiring and establishing new allies, in terms of business, commerce, things of that nature. Smart move, actually. Hmm. That's Trump. This is Trump. He creates a narrative, and for the most part, it's all hogwash. You know, uh, this is the way Trump sees the world. He wants to paint other countries who go against whatever it is he wants to be for as insignificant, incompetent, failing. This is what Trump does to those countries who speak up and speak out against American policy, but especially when they speak up and speak out against unnecessary or unjustified wars. Hmm. Now, this is huge. This is huge because you have right there in that frame, not this one here, but before that, you had Stammer of Germany. Excuse me, Stammer of the UK. You had Macron of France, and you had Merz of Germany, all sitting there. And that's not to miss mentioning Meloni of Italy, as well as Sanchez of Spain. These are five major European nations who are part of NATO who are saying, we're not supporting nothing you're doing right now, Trump. And we're going to call what you're doing wrong. We're going to call you wrong for what you're doing, as well as Israel. And a lot has taken place in terms of Israel's relationships with these Western NATO countries as well. That's not being publicized or published in the news as it should be, because it's something that people should know. You want to know what's really happening in terms of NATO and its relationship, not just with the United States, but Israel as well. And these moves that they're making in NATO are very drastic, very dramatic and drastic. They will affect Israel in the short term, let alone the long term. Those effects will be felt immediately. So this is what's happening in NATO. And again, kudos to NATO for standing up to Donald Trump and the things that the Trump administration is doing in the world. They're taking not a swipe, but a huge blow and swing at American hegemony around the world. Around the world. It seems that America, again, is on a downward spiral from its perch of the world leader and, the country that runs everything. Those days seem to be rapidly, evaporating, so this is as a result of Trump's actions, his policies in not just the Middle East, but around the world. Also, because Trump and his administration did not do their homework, they were misled to involve themselves in a situation that actually only benefits Israel and no one else. So Trump and them will feel the brunt of this in due time, no doubt about that. But until then, we remain to see what's going to occur in this respect. We think that in the coming days, NATO will also, again, make some statements that will affect the relationship between the United States and NATO countries. Until then, you guys take care of yourselves and each other.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.